Hello everyone, my name is the Mad Scorpion, and welcome to another Forgetting That It's Friday and That You Have Zerd to cover for Friday's evenings as usual. Sorry if it's a little bit late, but I frankly got a little bit distracted. But getting right into it, we have a few decent catalysts, at least decent in a surmountable way. The first being Skyburners, which it basically is just a stat buff for a gun that already has many perks about it. Because if you don't know Skyburners, it is a anti-cabal slug rifle. It pierces failing shields naturally, and has a nifty perk that when it's hip-fired, it more so lobs projectiles as opposed to shooting bullets, and those projectiles apply Scorch on anything they hit, leading to many ignitions. With the catalyst being, I believe, just a reload speed and a stability or a range stat buff, in the end, it is very much a simple and not required catalyst, if that makes sense. It helps, but it's not exactly pressing like something, say, on Sleeper Simulant, which the catalyst grants it bonus ammo reserves in addition to sped up weapon charge time. And I do believe this is one of those times that weapon charge time does not actually change the damage it deals, mainly because, of course, Sleeper Simulant is a linear fusion rifle. And it's a hard-hitting one at that. So this is one that I would definitely say get as soon as possible if you don't have it. More ammo, faster charge time, that is just plain more damage and extended damage phases. Now, in terms of the armor, there's a mix of usefulness in the list here for PvE and PvP. The first, for Hunters, is Ophidius Faith, which it makes it so you get 2 throwing knife charges. And while getting final blows with a throwing knife grants a consecutive temporary damage bonus, the Gambler's Dodge also refreshes the timer on it. So if you're ever a fan of the classic old Blade Dancer, or not Blade Barrage subclass tree in Destiny, and you're a fan of just throwing your throwing knives, refreshing with Gambler's Dodge, and just going back and forth throwing knives all day, this is definitely something I'd recommend going for in case you are just a fan of doing nothing but throwing those knives. Next is Titan's Ramparts, which is always kind of been a Crucible-based exotic. It makes it so that anyone standing behind a towering barricade could shoot straight through it. Then, as well, the towering barricade takes increased damage from opposing guardians, but that's kind of the Crucible standby. There's been many a times its health values have been tweaked to kind of make it not useless in PvE, and also not make it overbearing in PvP, but still to this day, the only place it really lives is PvP and something like Trials or Iron Banner. So if you're looking for this for GMs, I would say something else is far more valuable. And speaking of something that could be valuable but may have some competition, the Stag. It is a very nifty perk where your Rift prevents damage reductions to, provides damage reduction to anyone standing in it, and as well you get bonus Rift energy when you are critically wounded. So if you're ever in a case where your Rift is half charge and you're taking damage and suddenly you're very low on health, well, guess what? You'll more than likely have your Rift back completely. In addition, on your death, it creates a healing Rift for your corpse, which makes it so that you don't self-res, but anyone who might be standing near you or might be trying to resurrect you in a timed window, this would allow it to be a little bit safer to res in that case. I used to run the Stag practically all the time in year 1 of Destiny 2 because it was just such a good thing to have for the raid scenario. But nowadays there's many other things that is like Sanguine Alchemy for damage buffs in the Rift, and even Prometheum Spur, which I think is okay, but I don't know if it's better just off the top of my head. But at the same time, the Stag is a very solid option if you're looking for a little bit more survivability or just plain more Rifts on the field. And then there is the usual of the exotic class items to farm out in case you're still hunting exact roles. Getting into his offerings for currencies, we have Enhancement Prisms, Enhancement Cores, Glimmer, and Vanguard Engrams, in addition to his usual flavor of the 9. Then, with the strange offerings, on the front page, we have a Hawk Moon with Rangefinder this time, and the Jade Rabbit, which this is the weird one that sounds like it could be useful, because back and forth you can change precision shots, to gain bonus damage on the next body shot, and when you body shot, you also refill the ammo to the magazine, which the Catalyst also is just a plain stat buff. I believe it's stability and range, and it also has Zen Moment right off the bat with a combination of high caliber rounds. This is basically just Scout Rifle the gun. It's kind of the antithesis of Mida, as Mida is fast-firing Scout Rifle the gun, with Jade Rabbit being the slower-firing, harder-hitting, and more stable of the two, which, in terms of Crucible, this thing's always had that spot there, but in terms of being effective, it's never exactly been effective. Flat out just saying it that way. When Momentum Control was introduced and this thing could one-shot, it was the king, but then it was, replaced by every single bow in reality. Then next we have Hard Light, which speaking of used to be the king, we basically have Element Rifle the gun. Its perk of the fundamentals used to give you elemental capacitor when rotating between the available damage types, which is void, arc, and solar, but it also grants temporary increased damage when you apply or gain an elemental buff that matches the current damage type. So if you're on something like Prismatic and have all three of the light elemental subclass buffs, then it would be pretty good for this. However, it's not exactly living so well ever since elements didn't really matter so much, so to speak. Its main perk itself being that rounds fired from this target have reduced damage fall off. They overpen targets and ricochet off of surfaces, with ricocheted shots dealing bonus damage. Basically, it's a laser rifle that has bouncing laser rounds. But at the same time, the elemental rotation, it's in a weird spot because it is no longer as needed for anti-shield capacity, but is beneficial if you're going into elemental pickups. Now, with the last one, speaking of elemental, we have the Two-Tailed Fox, which basically at its base fires 2 rockets, a void and a solar one that can track onto the same target, with the void one suppressing targets and the solar rockets, causing damage over time. I believe they updated it so it is all caught up to date, as in the void suppresses, the solar does scorch, and the catalyst that provides an arc rocket also jolts combatants on hit. Pretty much, if you want any sort of light debuff or all three, this is a pretty solid option. I wouldn't say it's the best for DPS. I think at one point this was the king to have with every single Galahorn, but since then it's kind of been toned down. It's still useful, and it's especially useful for cheesing the witness in a damage phase, but, it's in a weird spot of it's good, but it's not really better than other options or even just a bait and switch legendary rocket launcher. So we just have to wait and see. And in terms of our weapons, which, side note, have you noticed that Xur only seems to have weapons from Season of the Deep? I don't know if it's because the weapons from Defiance, Wish, or Witch are available anywhere else, and they just don't need to show up here, but I swear I only see weapons from Season of the Deep in terms of moderately up-to-date weapons. But aside from that, we have the Spare Rations, an adaptive kinetic frame hand cannon from Season of the Deep, the Distant Pull, which is a stasis rapid-fire sniper from the same season, the Number, a precision frame arc auto rifle from Season of the Splicer, the Annual Skate, which is a solar adaptive frame hand cannon from Season of the Lost, Canis Major, which is a solar rapid fire frame grenade launcher in the heavy slot from the same season, as well as the Thin Precipice, a strand vortex frame sword from Season of the Deep, and the usual associated class swords. And to wrap it all up, we have the Armory from Season of the Undying with substitutional alloy in case you want to look like old withered Vex mossy people. But with that, that is the end of the Xur stock reset update. Again, apologies for being a little bit behind and posting this later than usual, but I hope you can find something useful in Xur stock, and I will see you in the next video.